I'm Yonatan, and this is the DAG protocol. It's a joint work with Michael Sutton from DAG Labs. Okay. So 14 years ago today, Satoshi released his Bitcoin white paper. And since then, I developed the hobby of devising alternative consensus protocols based on proof of work. It started with Ghost Protocol, Spectre, and Phantom Ghost DAG. But none of these protocols, nor any other consensus protocol, achieves what we set out to do in DAG. So about 3 years ago, we set out on a journey to solve the following problem. We were trying to achieve a proof of work protocol that is resilient to up to 50% attackers without knowing anything about the network delay. Okay, so Bitcoin, or in its formal name, Nakamoto Consensus, or Phantom Ghost DAG, these protocols assume something about network delay. Bitcoin assumes network delay is much smaller than 10 minutes. Phantom Ghost DAG assumes a different parameter, but all of these works do not assume something about the network delay. And we want to do something that, we want to devise a protocol that does not assume anything. And this is no easy task. It took us about 3 years. And there's a good reason why it's not an easy task. It seems to contradict known impossibility results in the consensus literature. Okay, so a bit of a background, intuition about synchronous versus partially synchronous protocols. So synchronous protocols are consensus protocols where the consensus assumes a global upper bound on a network delay. For instance, Bitcoin's 10 minutes. And the output is an ordering of the events in the system. Okay, so you can achieve resiliency to 49% attackers. This is a known result. In partially synchronous protocols, the protocol is not allowed to know anything about the delay. So no 10 minutes, no other 5-6 seconds in Ethereum, and that sort of stuff. And it's a well-known result that in that case, you can only achieve 67% or 34% resiliency to Byzantine attackers. Okay, so any attacker with a third or more of the hash rate can attack the system. So with these two results, it does seem that we set out to solve an impossible challenge. And indeed, throughout these 3 years, we did occasionally break down mentally. So what's the advantage of not assuming anything about the latency? The advantage is you can be responsive to the network actual delay. Meaning, so in Bitcoin, we have the 10 minutes latency parameter, but since then, the network infrastructure has improved immensely, but we're still stuck with this block interval of 10 minutes. And similarly, in any consensus protocol that is synchronous, you are stuck with a parameter that you began with. So if you have a block time of 12 seconds, then you're stuck with it even if the network is much faster. So we want to have a consensus protocol that is responsive, can perform tightly with the actual network delay, and I'll be more precise about that shortly, but it's still resilient to 50%, to up to 50% attackers. Okay, so what do I mean by being responsive to the actual network delay? If by that we mean to the network delay that we observe in the system, then this is impossible to solve. This is a known impossibility result, both in the permissioned partial synchrony literature and in the permissionless and the proof of work literature. There's a work by Pass and Shi that show that indeed you can't achieve this property. But you can achieve this property if you want to be responsive not to the network delay that you see in the current network, but to the maximal delay that you believe an attacker can impose on the network. So let's say I see that the Bitcoin blocks are propagating within 1 or 2 seconds. This is not enough. I need to additionally assume, okay, an attacker cannot delay the blocks in the system by more than 10 seconds. So my parameter is 10 seconds. So this is very important to emphasize. We are not responsive to the actual network delay that you observe. We're responsive to the actual worst-case delay that you believe the network to have. And I emphasize you believe because any user can set her own beliefs. There's no agreement on this parameter. You can run your full node with 10 confirmations, wait for 10 confirmations, and believe the delay to be 2 seconds, and you can run your full node with 30 seconds and believe the delay to 30 confirmations and believe the delay to be 10 minutes. It's a user's local decision to decide whether they want what parameter to set for D. Okay, so what is block DAG? By now, it's a more well-known construction, but basically, any construction of a proof of work that does not wait, for every block to propagate through the entire network, every asynchronous proof of work will result in a DAG. Okay, so in a DAG, there's all these events as just blocks that are mined regularly as in the proof of work manner. And the only difference is instead of just pointing at the winning chain, the longest chain or the ghost chain, you point at every block that you see. Okay, so for instance, the miner of block Z in this example saw like Y, W, X, and until the genesis block, and therefore added 2 pointers to these blocks. Okay, this is like basically a DAG, and what do we need consensus for in this system? We need to know how to order blocks that are not related through the DAG topology. What do I mean by that? So block Z in this example was clearly mined after Y and W, right? Because it has a hash pointer to them. And block Y was similarly mined provably after block X. But what is the relationship between Y and W, and what happens when there's a double spend between them? This is the only role of the consensus protocol. So the single role of a DAG consensus protocol is to output a linear ordering on the DAG so that we are sure that all nodes understand whether a Y precedes W or W precedes Y. All other blocks that have a topological relationship do not need to be explicitly ordered. Lastly, the parameter K is basically the DAG width. So if you think about, let's say the delay in the network is 10 seconds and there are 10 blocks per second in this system, then you would expect, under normal circumstances, that the DAG width will be 100 blocks. Okay, in this example, the DAG width is about 4 or 5 blocks. And now the core issue is whether you know K or not, whether the protocol assumes K in advance or not, whether the protocol designer hard-coded the parameter K or the parameter D into the protocol. Okay. So DAG-Night was built upon previous work, the Phantom paper, which I co-authored. And in Phantom, we presented a generalization of the Bitcoin protocol. So without getting into too much detail, just using intuition, in Phantom, we observed that in a DAG, you can notice what the honest set of blocks is. And the honest set of blocks is the largest K-connected set. What is a K-connected set? It's just a set of blocks marked here in blue that are almost fully connected to each other, save maybe 4 blocks. So every block in the blue set that you see here is connected to all other blue blocks, apart from at most 4 blocks. And without needing to understand exactly how we define it, you get the intuition. If I tell you that the DAG width is 4 on average, or what you expect the DAG width or the DAG asynchrony to be 4 blocks, this means that on average, in every unit of delay in the network, there are 4 blocks that are mined in parallel. That's what you expect. In which case, you should look for a set of blocks that resemble this structure, this predicted or expected structure. And well, an attacker can also form such a cluster, such a set of well-connected, K-connected blocks. However, the attacker has less than 50% of the proof of work. Therefore, the attacker will not own a majority of the blocks. Okay. Okay, so the holy grail of DAG Night, and this was the main breakthrough that Michael presented 3 years ago, was that we don't need to know K in advance. While Phantom knows K in advance, it gets as a parameter the expected DAG width. DAG Night does not need to know it. And instead, DAG Night solves a min-max optimization problem. It searches for the minimal K such that the largest K cluster achieves 50%, a majority of the DAG. So it's a very nice paradigm shift, and I encourage you to read the paper. In general, it's a very long journey. So it started with a very simple pseudocode, and it ended up like this. And it's not only a matter of implementation. There are profound reasons for these procedures, for these complications, which we detail in the protocol, in the paper, which we will upload today, marking the 14-year anniversary of the Bitcoin white paper. Here's a short summary of comparison to previous works in DAG. Yeah, and I guess I'll conclude with that.
So we have time for one quick question, if anyone.
All right, I'll ask. So your definition of responsive is not the traditional one. You already alluded to that. In Bitcoin, the only manifestation of the assumption that you know something about the network propagation delay is by setting the proof of work hardness to be much, much lower than what you assume. You never weight explicitly delta to make sure that you get.
Yeah, so the formal definition would be, is your protocol, given a certain target, lambda, set the difficulty adjustment, the block rate, to whatever it is you want to have. You want to have 1 block per millisecond, 1 block per second, per 10 minutes. Set that as a constant in the system, and use difficulty adjustment as in Bitcoin. And then the question we ask is the protocol secure for any latency? So fix lambda, fix the block creation rate, and now devise a consensus protocol that is secure for any D. And we argue that there's no proof of work, or indeed no other consensus protocol that has achieved it, and it's in fact impossible to achieve without proof of work.
Thank you.